The complication has been that subsequent to him being freed, his historic social media activity has been published, and there are some really unpalatable things in there, particularly highly anti-Semitic remarks and remarks about Israel, which are highly anti-Semitic, but also just some really offensive remarks about Britain, about the police, about kind of contemporary events in the UK that were going on when he published these remarks, which were obviously before he went to jail. So they're like historic in the sense that they're like 2008, 2009, so maybe like 15 years old. So there's been something of a political row in the UK, firstly about, well, how come we, A, gave this person citizenship in the first place, and B, expended quite a lot of political capital to convince President Sisi to release him from jail back to the UK. And secondly, I think a wider discourse about, and this is something we've touched on in this podcast in the past, is like just the way that people talk about Israel in the Arab world and the language that is used, and that is seen as quite routine and unremarkable in sort of social circles. When it's published years later in the glare of news coverage, it looks really, really problematic. And it is really problematic, to be clear, that there is a perception that this government didn't do enough to check whether the person they were extending this huge diplomatic effort on behalf of was actually deserving of that support. But it's also complicated by the fact that it was the previous Conservative government who gave him citizenship in the first place. So although the Conservative opposition here in the UK have really come out and attacked the Labour government, I think their line of attack is slightly blunted by the fact that it was their own government and the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak at the time who led the charge to have him freed and also to give him citizenship back in 2021. All that to say, an interesting story on a number of levels that touches on the language used by democracy campaigners in the Middle East. And I guess the moral is maybe a bit that, you know, both things can be true. He was a democracy campaigner and he held and expressed really unpleasant, unpalatable views, and that democracy campaigners don't come in pretty gift wrap packages every time.